What is up, everyone? Matt and Geoff back for another real review, and today we got an interesting treat for you. It is none other than the second Luca Guadagnino film of the year, and that is Daniel Craig's the Daniel Craig led film Queer. Sorry, it's kind of late as we're recording this, and I've been up for a long time. So
It's not just the second Luca Guadagnino film of the year. It's the second film directed by Luca Guadagnino, written by Justin Kuritsky's, with cinematography by Sayumba Mukdeep Pram, edited by Marco Costa, with music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. This is the same goddamn creative team as Challengers. One of my favorite movies of the year.
And to be fair, the only reason that is because Challengers was supposed to come out last year in October, and it didn't because of the strikes. It happened.
Yes.
But that's not to belittle this film at all, because I will say I really dug this film. Daniel Craig instantly became one of my top choices for Best Actor, along with Timothée Chalamet for a performance in one of his multiple movies this year. But this movie lives and dies with accepting the journey with Daniel Craig. And ultimately, if you don't do that, or you don't buy into what he's giving or providing you, you're not going to have a fun time in theaters.
Yeah. I'll say this. This creative team, like I said, Challengers was, it's one of my favorite movies of the year. I rewatched it the other day. Love it. Queer is also one of my favorite movies of the year. I love this movie from back to front. I was with it on the journey. I was prepared, knowing that it can get into some strange places, and sure enough, it does. But what I really like is how it lulls you into this vibe that it has. This sort of like almost like this really sad, desperate, but also real casual and chill vibe of just, the life of this lonely queer man who happens to be living in Mexico City. And it's so beautifully, the way it looks.
The way you either love how it looks or you hate how it looks.
They were able to make this look, between the production design of it, the way that they use some visual effects in the beginning for the way that they kind of make it feel like, oh, this is definitely a city, but also at times it feels like a soundstage.
Yes.
Like real old classic Hollywood, complete with these like lush colors that they kind of have in the backgrounds and the skies, in a way that I don't think that many movies look like this.
I agree.
At least anymore. Movies are allowed. Yes. Movies are allowed to look like this.
Yes, and I've seen people hate on it for that reason. I'm like, really? Because I thought that was beautiful.
Like this movie
it engaged me more.
There's this line in the film. By the way, we'll get into the plot real quick after this. But there's a line in the film where it goes like, I believe he's either like, I'm not gay, or I'm not queer. I'm disembodied.
Yes.
And it's like this whole life that he's living in Mexico, this life away from what his life could have been or should have been. And it's just, everything feels sort of dreamlike, but also sort of aimless and adrift. Just like, this feeling of, being disembodied. So of course he's saying he's not queer, he's disembodied. It's that he's not planted on what people normally accept, or people seem to acknowledge as, normal. Not saying that being queer is or is not normal. It's just, from the setting that it's in.
Yes, and it's a line that is used twice in the film, and it's a powerful moment both times.
Wonderful film. It's so, I mean, like, here, this is the Wikipedia premise. I'll just read it off, and it's the best way to just kind of summarize it, because it's really not about the story or the plot. Set in 1950s Mexico City, it follows Lee, played by Daniel Craig, who, after fleeing from a drug bust in New Orleans, wanders around the city's clubs and becomes infatuated with Allerton, a discharged American Navy serviceman. Allerton is played by Drew Starkey. That's about as like deep as like a premise description really can go. It's yeah, he wanders around the city's clubs. He's wandering the town aimlessly.
Trent,
Not he's not in one place. He's stuck in a place that he doesn't necessarily want to be in, but also it's sort of a home, but not a home. Like I said, it's he's not this. He's disembodied. He's out of place. He's floating through
yeah,
time, and when you float through, you're not really attaching yourself to anything. And for someone as lonely as Lee, that's a pretty sad thing.
yeah, and ultimately, this is going back to another film from earlier this year. I feel like this does a better job of covering the same overall arching theme as Kinds of Kindness, which is how far would you go to feel loved?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it there, but yeah, you're right there. It does it in a
Different
different,
way. Does it in a different way.
very different
Much
way.
different way.
But you're
But
right.
the
The
overarching
core,
theme is the
yeah.
same.
It's no, I get exactly what you mean. Two films that couldn't be more different can hit the same sort of themes in drastically different way. I see what you mean by that. It's how far would you go, but also like it feels like it's not just solely about how would you go to feel loved or to protect the one you love somehow. It's I don't know. It's hard to describe some of this stuff if it's more of like a feeling. The
Yeah.
movie is very much in very different ways. It's
Yes.
very much a vibe, and I say in different ways meaning like there's a vibe for a majority of the film,
And there's
and
3
then
chapters to it and an
yeah,
epilogue.
there's a different vibe for each of these chapters, and these vibes don't necessarily on face value feel like they click, but I think that they inform each other really well.
Yes.
Uh, at the center of it all, like you mentioned, like there's you gotta follow the journey on from him, and if so, then that's good. But also, you mentioned that it might be one of your best performance of the year. I gotta say, I gotta think about it a little more. But Craig and the other best performance of the year to me, best actor, at least off the top of my head, is probably Coleman Domingo from Sing Sing.
I still got to see Sing Sing.
And but I think that personally, I think Craig might be my favorite performance of the year. He's my, best actor in this. Let's take, you know, awards and turn it into a competition like sports rather than just acknowledging art for the sake of art. Craig is so good. I don't think he's ever been better. He's really taken that southern drawl that he's been working on. Like I said early, I said to you actually before we started recording this. I don't know if I mentioned it. I just rewatched Logan Lucky, which really was just like
Wow.
it threw Daniel Craig out to show everyone like he's not just the suave, handsome guy. He can be a strange, odd man. He can do a funny accent in a way that both can be funny, but also is completely within the character that he's created and organic within this performance. And he's really sculpted this Colonel Sanders esque voice through through Knives Out and
Without
Glass
series,
Onion
yeah.
and whatnot. And here it's just he's never been better. I think he's
Yeah.
never been more um,
Vulnerable.
vulnerable. I was about to say pathetic, but yes,
That's that too.
he is. So the best way to describe this movie to me is this is the most beautiful film ever made about a stage 5 clinger.
And that Dave Five Klinger might also just happen to be Geoff if Geoff was
James
here.
Bond.
No, I was about to say that stage 5 Klinger might also be a perfect representation of you if you were queer.
Oh,
We talked about this while I was watching it.
man, I don't remember. That was a while ago.
That was just a few days ago.
Time means nothing. Time is a flat circle.
I mean, there's a point in this film where time really does mean nothing.
Mm-hmm.
and
yeah, this is it. It's by William S. Burroughs, the book that this is based off of, and there's a whole lot of weird, trippy stuff. It's not quite like it's David Lynch. It's not quite normal dream logic-y stuff, but it's very rooted in both that feeling of keeping you feeling adrift, while also very clearly being like, this is a movie about people who also do a bunch of drugs. And like I said, that's where like a lot of the vibe comes with. It's like, oh yeah, of
Mhm.
course it's a movie about people that do a bunch of drugs. Of course it's a vibe. Um, and yeah, okay, I see what you mean. So, but different. He does a whole lot of bad drugs. What are you talking about?
I
I
didn't
don't do
specify.
anything
I didn't
illegal.
specify what.
This guy, this is a film
Hey,
about addiction.
hey! I'm not getting into the details, and
I
it wasn't. It
Yeah,
wasn't that
no,
stuff. It was. It was.
you infer to make it sound like it's bad. Like, oh man,
It's
whew.
the stuff at the end, and we had a full on conversation
Yeah, he
about
does
that.
a whole lot of this is a story about a man who is
Yes.
addicted to everything. He's addicted to drugs. You know, he had the drug bust. He had to leave the country. He's as he seems to be, connecting and more able to be outward. He's able to show what he can be like as a normal participating member of society. But the more he feels like he's starting to cling on to the attention of someone else who's finally looking him in the eye and realizing he doesn't want that to let them go at all. He starts itching after them the same way he does after heroin
Mhm.
and other drugs, and it gets to some very dark, trippy, odd places. And I was along for the whole ride in ways that, like, during it I'm thinking to myself, is this working for me?
It,
And then as it's done, I'm like, no, I it worked for me. It worked for me better than I thought it would in the moment, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
and that's something we talked about. There's a certain point in this film. I want to say it's towards the tail end of the second chapter where you either go along for the ride or you don't from that point forward. And while the ride was a little more bumpy for me than it was you, at the end I still bought
Mhm.
into it more than I left it at face value. So if you're gonna rate this film, Jeff, what are you giving it?
Well, hold on. I wanna just
Oh, you
make
want to
sure
go?
that
You
I
want
note some other stuff.
to? Okay.
So first of all, Trent Reznor and Atticus
Oh,
Ross.
that score's fantastic.
I don't know if you know this, but these guys, geniuses.
Yes.
When I do work, when I have to do my actual day job and I have to pay attention and lock in, since it came out this whole year, I just turn on the Challengers soundtrack, and it locks me in as like, I'm gonna get this done. Whatever spreadsheet I'm reviewing, the contract that I have to get through, that I have to review and whatnot, and that music, it just boom, it really gets me going, like moving forward, to get like work done there. And this is such a different score. It reminds me a lot of, even though they weren't from the same filmmakers, back in 2020 when Reznor and Ross were double nominated at the Oscars for two of the best scores of the year. That year, I don't remember one of them quite as much there, but the Oscar winning score was for Soul, along with John Baptiste, great score. And then the other score that I don't remember quite as much about, but I remember it being quite good, was the score they did for Fincher's Mank. And the two scores couldn't be more different, those two different ones. And the same thing here. This is such a different change of pace from Challengers earlier this year. Just like how Queer is very much a different change of pace for Luca Guadagnino from Challengers. And it really speaks to their talent, and their ability to branch out and do different stuff, that just they're able to make it work. They're able to just hit the hammer on the nail on the head just so precisely, and then hit a completely different nail on the head in a completely different angle, and yet that also goes right in somehow.
Yeah.
It sounds like a weird analogy there, but it made sense in my head as I was saying it. The music's amazing. Like I said, Mukti Prum's cinematography, great. The editing is also great from Marco Costa. He's so precise and energetic with his work in Challengers, and here it's a much more languid, laid back kind of pace to the film, because rather than it trying to beat you over the head with this idea of perfectionism and competition, there's a different little bit of competition in this, but it's not the same. It's very much this slower paced film that's supposed to sort of envelop you and bring you into this dreamlike fog that it's presenting. And Casa, does a great job there too. The screenwriter, Justin Kuritsky's another, he's showed that he's really great at writing unrequited love stories, or
Yeah.
at least very complicated love story. Between this and Challengers, of course, everyone compares the Challengers' work with Past Lives due to Kurtzky's relationship with Celine Song. The two of them, incredible works there all around. I know I'm just listing and saying, oh, I'm listing this and it's good. I'm listing this and it's good. But they all just sort of work so well together to kind of grab you and kind of hold you tight and pull you under. So that way you're able to breathe only these toxic love fumes that this film is trying to present to you. Also, I do want to say, there's a lot of focus, at least online, about, oh, Drew Starkey hot. Yes, first of all, he absolutely is.
Yeah.
Daniel
Even
Craig,
though he's a killer cop.
yeah, Daniel Craig, even hotter in this movie, I'd say for that. But I want to just point out a couple different performances. Very briefly, David Lowery shows up. That's the director of such films as A Ghost Story, Peter Pan and Wendy.
Wait.
David Lowery.
I saw that name. I'm like, that can't be the director. And then
Yeah, recently he just directed, Skeleton Crew, Star Wars. Yeah, bald guy with a big mustache. And
you're kidding me. I
then,
gotta check this.
yeah, we have Leslie Manville in the cast, and I love Leslie Manville. I haven't seen her in many roles, of course, but I love Phantom Thread, and I have seen Phantom Thread a handful of times, and I love her in it. As I said, her work here, as when she came on screen, it took me a bit to realize, oh wait, that's her. She's another person that's able to show such a different range where they're able to also just knock it out of the park. And another great example of someone who knocked out their small role out of the park is Jason Schwartzman.
Yes, he
Jason
was
Schwartzman is
my
like
favorite.
bona fide, like bona fide grade A character actor work in this movie. He's so great. He's such a scene stealer. He's so funny, but in such like
about
that.
His character is clearly in love with Daniel Craig's character.
Yeah, he's Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig could clearly actually have someone who would love him back, and it's just because it's the ultimate irony there.
Yeah.
The one person that loves him, he could never love that way.
Yeah.
It definitely seems that way. Like,
yeah.
But it's also
there's this one scene where Daniel Craig gets up and he just touches the seat that he just got up from. I'm just like, oh yeah, he's in love with him, and
a stage 5 clinger of a stage 5 clinger.
Yep.
It's hysterical. He's so funny. This incredible running bit. It's not so much a spoiler. It's just like, this is a running joke about this man. He's a man who he is also like, he's a complete whore.
Yeah.
And he's such a slut for any guy, basically. And yet he always seems to go solely, and you never see it happen. You just hear about it after the fact. He always seems to go for someone who ends up stealing stuff from him. Every time. He's always just talks about his hookups after the fact and how it's like, I need to stop doing this because now I'm without like my sandals and I'm without my notebooks and I'm without this. And it's always something. And he tells it with such like this dry matter of factness. Like, it's like, yeah, I know I do it and I know it's bad and I'm going to keep doing it anyway, because that's just kind of how I am. And he's so good in that there. And it was such a delight seeing him in there. And he's been on such a roll lately, the last couple of years. Just like Luca Guadagnino, he's been on such a roll, like since Call Me By Your Name. Actually, no. To me, it's before Call Me By Your Name. I haven't seen any of his films before A Bigger Splash, but I mean, A Bigger Splash, Call Me By Your Name, Suspiria, which I need to rewatch. I admire more than I like, but I really did admire just the balls it took to just try and do what they tried to do in that movie. Also from Justin Kritzky's. We got Bones and All, which is another very
Well, we're
interesting
going to talk
film.
about that one.
Yeah, though that one is a little more divisive. I really like it quite a bit.
Fuck that movie. It's a CW movie.
I disagree. Whatever. I know that people feel very split on that one.
Listen. That was my introduction because I never saw Call Me by Your Name.
Oh yeah,
So,
this is Call Me
so
by Your Name.
that
This
was
is
my
way
intro.
more. This is way closer to like a trippier Call Me by Your Name.
That was my introduction to Luca Guadagnino.
Oh,
And
well, that's definitely a side of him.
so, just like my father, I was ready to be like, this guy's a freak. I'm never watching this stuff again. But I just
You kept going, and I'm glad you did. So you asked me before, like, what would I rate this movie if I were to, kind of like just narrow down my thoughts. I think that it does kind of make itself a little bit clunky towards the end with what it's doing. I'm along for the ride for it the majority of the way there, and I do really love what it's trying to do. It could have been done a little, stronger in a way. It could have been a little the film, as languid as, the pacing is, and I admired it. I do think that it could have been a smidge tighter as well. But between just this lush look where even me, someone who has trouble with being able to see different colors because I'm partially colorblind. There, just the way it's able to make the skies look, and this sort of this vibrant feel to it, and this luscious score, and it's so filled with this sadness and achy feeling to it, and Daniel Craig at the heart of it as just the best performance I've seen all year, I feel. I personally, I'm at a 4.5 out of 5 on it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, like I said. Let's get that visual going. There we go. Yeah, I'm at a 4.5 out of 5. And I'm so thrilled that I get to be here appreciating film as Luca Guadagnino continues to kind of break out and expand upon what people saw early on from Call Me by Your Name and capitalize on that in different ways. So that way, it's both a film that is so clearly a Luca Guadagnino product while still kind of pushing what we expect from him into slightly different and intriguing directions.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, once you get on that travel side of things, you either go with it or you don't. And my sentiments are very similar to what you said, but like I said, I just didn't go along with it as much as you, and for that, I'm at a 4 out of 5. Well, the embargo's up, so I can say this. The only other performance so far that I have anywhere near this, and it might actually be above it, I'm not 100% sure, is the Timothée Chalamet performance in A Complete Unknown, which that review will drop next week. So Craig is just phenomenal, and that's the real driving force for me when it comes to this film. And I'm glad I got to see it. This is probably one of those ones that are a one-time watch for me. Like, I enjoyed it. Still probably won't own it, even though I do collect my physical media. It's like, cool, saw it, had fun with it. That performance will live in my head rent-free, but I don't need to watch it again.
This feels like the kind of film that while I get like, a normal Blu-ray release, I feel like A24 would try to capitalize on what this movie could be for them by having it be one of those exclusives.
That's what most of their stuff is, though. Unless it's
now it is. There are plenty though that
Yeah.
that do go out, but it's clear like there are specific ones.
It's clear unless it's a hit, they don't put it out anymore.
Even then, it depends on what they qualify as a hit. But I'm really interested to see both, how people embrace it as this is more widely available. But also, I want to see how it lingers both with other people. If it feels like the kind of film that to me, since I saw it, the kind of gets under your skin a bit in a way that I really admire and I'm happy about. And that's why I do feel like I'm going to end up rewatching it at some point in time. In the not in the near future, but I will. And I think that it's one that I feel like I could go back and forth on. Am I going to be a little even like warmer to it, or am I going to be slightly colder to it
Yeah.
upon rewatch? And I feel like time is going to be good to this movie, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that, folks, that's our review. Thank you for tuning in, but also be sure to tune in to everything else we do over here, including our sister channel, What Real Gaming. That's where all of our Twitch streams go to live for a video on demand format. Taylor, one of our partners here, does a fantastic job curating that. He does a majority of the Twitch streaming, but occasionally I hop in there and do some stuff. And then also on this channel, be sure to check out the ongoing podcast series, Views from Metropolis, a podcast on the Man of Steel, leading into James Gunn's Superman from his birthplace, because Metropolis is Cleveland, and that's all there is to it. But also, if you haven't already checked out our live stream from last Friday, where myself and special guest Amaru Moses went into detail about the rumored Harry Potter HBO series castings, you can go do that. J.K. Rowling may be a horrible turf, but it's one of those things where we have agreed we separate the art from the artist in this case. So be sure to check that out and just hear our thoughts on the rumors surrounding that series. But yeah, with that, folks, signing off, I am Matt. That is Jeff. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow everything we do over here at Wattville Entertainment, and we'll see you next time.